Change doesn't break people, confusion does. When leaders bring clarity, change becomes the pathway to prosperity. Welcome to the Voice of Impact, where belief meets action. Our podcast amplifies stories, systems, and solutions behind meaningful change. I'm your host, Robert Ndoping. Today's conversation centers around something every leader, every professional, and every human being experiences in life, and that's change. In the
Mhm.
world where transformation is constant, organizational structures, careers are all evolving, life is shifting in unexpected ways. The real question becomes, how do we not just survive change, but prosper through it? My guest today is Mary Lou Panzano, an award winning communications executive, a coach, speaker, best-selling author with more than 35 years of experience helping organizations navigate complex change. Mary Lou spent over 4 decades in corporate America, working with global companies such as Prudential, Pfizer, and Bayer, where she specialized in employee communications and guiding leaders through strategic transformation. After a long and successful executive career and following a deeply personal family loss, Mary Lou made a courageous decision. She stepped away from her demanding corporate role to pursue a calling that has been growing within her for years, helping people prosper. Today, as the founder of How People Prosper, Mary Lou works with leaders, professionals, and individuals to build and navigate change more effectively, personally and professionally, using her proprietary 4C's change framework, a model built around clarity, connection, caring, and courage. She's also the co-author of Cracking the Rich Code, Volume 18. I'm humbled to be part of that series, Volume 17. She's also an author and contributor to The Art of Connection, 365 Days of Resilience Codes, which I'm also humbled to be part of that as well. And she's also the author of an upcoming book, Cementing Change, Cracking the Code for Communications That Work. It's scheduled to be released sometime soon, so stay tuned for that. Mary Lou's mission is simple yet powerful: to help people lead through change and ultimately prosper through it. Mary Lou, welcome to the Voice of Impact.
Thank you, Robert. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, Mary Lou, before we look into the coaching, helping leaders navigate change, your rich experience in corporate America, a listener would like to know what experiences during that your corporate journey shaped everything you're doing right now, especially helping people prosper and leaders through the change that you work on your model.
Thank you so much, Robert, for this opportunity. You said it earlier as you started the introduction for the podcast that everyone goes through change. We deal with it all the time, all day, every day. Some changes are changes that we want to make, and most of the time, changes are happening to us. And what I have found throughout my career is there's a way to make change happen that is a miserable experience. And there's a way to make change happen where you have more control over the process and you have a much better outcome. And what I learned through my corporate experience was really after I had completed a very significant 3 year change program when I was at Bayer. And the change very quickly involved two, I would say, integrated changes at the same time. One was we were consolidating 5 of our offices into one in the New Jersey and New York area. So that in and of itself is a huge change for people, a change in commutes, a change in daycare and childcare. All kinds of things happen when you are changing where you go to work every day. And this was before the pandemic when a lot of people were in the office 5 days a week. The other was that we were taking away the private office space that all of most of our leaders had earned in their careers, professionals in the pharmaceutical industry, and giving them open space. So taking away all their private space and putting them into an open space work environment. Now, today, that's not a big deal. But about 12 or 15 years ago, this was becoming a popular way of operating in businesses. So a cultural shift and a physical shift. And after that program won some pretty prestigious communications awards and we achieved the goals, it was a $250 million project, and the company was investing in its people and becoming a larger footprint in the United States. And it was the first of Bayer's offices to go into this environment. So a lot of eyes were on us to make this work. So about a year after we completed the project and we had won some industry awards for the communications program that we ran, I got started. I was being asked to come talk about what we did. And the first opportunity was at an International Association of Business Communicators conference in Chicago, Illinois, in the US. And I didn't know how I was going to speak to 200 of my colleagues and professional communicators in 40 minutes and talk about a 3-year change program. So I came up with this change program, this change framework that you're going to be talking about. What was interesting about this is after I gave that talk, people told me I should copyright this because it was so compelling. And I thought, really? It was just me sitting in a room on a Sunday trying to figure out how to get my slides done in enough time and be able to give something to people that they could use right away, that was easy to remember, and that was easy to share because not everybody gets to take everyone to to the conference with them. And so that's where all of this change framework that's the basis of what took place here. But after I used this for many years, I realized I had been using it previously. I didn't have a name for it. And then I also realized that you can apply this framework to any kind of change, whether it's an organizational change or a personal change. And so that's what I focus on now. And I'm happy to tell you more about how I got into communications and how I've bridged this forward. But that was really where it all began, was having the opportunity to talk about what we did, how we did it, and why it worked, and then figuring out a way to talk about it that is simple to remember, easy to apply, and easy to share.
Ah, that's so amazing. I'm just humbled for to hear you really share, that piece of time where, I mean, it felt like a light bulb moment for you,
Hmm.
to use that and build something really unique. I also just want to ask something about something related to that. So, how did your personal experiences shape your transition from an executive to now a coach?
That was one of the largest changes I've made in my lifetime, and it took a lot of courage to do it. And what wound up happening, Robert, a little bit of context in throughout all of 2020 and most of 2021, what was going on in the world. We were dealing with a global pandemic. And for a healthcare and agriculture company that I was working for, Bayer at the time, there was no way that we could not be operating at full speed through a pandemic. So I had the great privilege of being on the crisis team, and I was leading the communications for the US business around what we were going to be helping our employees be able to do, and all of the process and protocol and policy changes we were making to keep people as safe as possible for those who had to go into the office, and helping those who had to transition and work from home deal with all of that. It was a big change for a lot of people, and it happened almost overnight for many millions of people. What was interesting about that experience, though, was that as we got further along in the process, the vaccines came out. Do we require them? Do we not? There were just a million things happening all of the time, and we were in crisis mode for, I don't know, 17 or 18 months. In August of 2021, my brother passed away. He was only 2 years younger than me. He was 3 weeks short of his 61st birthday, and he had a debilitating disease. It was a chronic condition that there is no cure for. So at his deathbed in Florida, I was thinking to myself, he was unconscious, and I was thinking to myself, what must he be thinking? Like, what are all the things that he talked about wanting to do in his life that he's not going to be able to do now? Like, his life is ending, it's over. And I thought about that for a long time. And I thought, there are so many things he wished he could have done that he either wasn't physically able to do or just didn't know how to make the change work for himself. He would get so far and then not take it over the line. And I thought, life is too short not to do the things you love most with those you love most. So coming back from those services, he lived in Florida at the time. I said to my husband, I think I need to retire now. And he said, what? We had planned on my retiring at the end of 2024, and here it is the summer of 2021. And he said, what? And I said, they my boss was fired. They split up his department into two pieces. I'm working for another new boss. We're dealing with rolling out a new strategy for the US business. We're still in the middle of the throes of the pandemic. All of this stuff is happening. And I realized, being with my family for a week in Florida, that I'm not spending enough time with my family and my friends because I am at a level of burnout that I didn't even realize until after I retired. And so for me, it was really about, I think I need to stop the madness in the corporate world. I've experienced that for 40 years. I think it's time to do something else. Now, I had always wanted to be a teacher, and I have a backstory about why that didn't happen early in my career, and I'm happy to share it if you want to learn it, hear it a little bit later. But I had gotten to a point where I said, I really think I need to pull the trigger now and spend more time with my husband and my family and giving back. Like, I have all this knowledge about how to handle change, and I would love to figure out how to share that with more people because I felt like if I couldn't help my brother figure out a way to implement the kinds of changes he wanted to make in his life, maybe I can help somebody else. And I would do that in his honor and in his memory. But that didn't come to me until about a year after I retired because I needed that much time to decompress. I really think that if I had gone to see a doctor for other than a vaccine during that time, I think they would have told me that my blood pressure was elevated and that I was on the verge of, a diagnosis of burnout. And I didn't really realize it until I was out of that situation. And so my brother had passed away, and that was like the tipping point for me. And then my husband lost a brother, a sister, and a niece within a couple of months of each other, early in 2021 and 22. So it was just a difficult time for us. And my husband's 11 years older than me. And I thought, what am I waiting for? Until I'm too old and too in ill health and don't have my faculties around me to go out and play and enjoy my time with him? How much more time are we going to have together? So that was really the pinnacle of making that decision, but I left a lot behind. A six-figure executive role, incredible health benefits, a fantastic team. I loved work that I was very passionate about, but I knew there was more. And so that was really the turning point for me.
Oh, Mary Lou, our hearts go out to you and your family.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
We can imagine. I mean, that period was a tough one for, I mean, almost everybody was touched in different ways, but I can definitely see how personal this was to you and your family. And it was not just one, it was like a series of events. But the good thing was you are using that for good, which is just amazing, and which, I mean, we are grateful that you use that moment to build what you're building right now, and the people you're actually supporting. And so this leads me to ask, you spend much of your years and your career helping organizations navigate transformation. I mean, why do you think so many change efforts in both organizational and personal lives fail?
I love this question because as I was doing the research for my book, I really wanted to make sure that the things that I had experienced that I knew hadn't worked before were still relevant today. So as I did that research, whether it was the top 10 reasons why executives, don't aren't achieving the goals they want to achieve, or the 7 things to avoid, whatever. I looked at a lot of different research reports, a lot of studies, and there were 4 themes that were common among all of them that were actually listed among the top 5 in just about every report that I had seen as I was researching for my book. And and those 4 reasons are primarily most people do not understand the change. They don't understand necessarily what it is. They're not sure why it's necessary. They don't know how the change is going to impact them directly, with the caveat that some people know exactly how it's going to impact them because they've just been told they lost their job. But there's a tailwind behind that they're not sure what that means for them. They don't know necessarily what it's going to take to get from the current state through the transition to the future state. So all of that uncertainty makes them want to resist the change. And as human beings, our brains are wired to resist change. Our preference is predictability. Change is completely the opposite. So people just tend to resist it in general. And then when it's imposed upon them in an environment, in an organization where typically there's not one change happening at one time, there's 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, and they're usually major changes. Leadership changes, policy changes, process changes, new products, divestitures, mergers, moves. There's hundreds of different kinds of things that cause a lot of change for people. So imagine trying to wrap your head around all of this, and then you go home and life happens. So is there any wonder that there's burnout and mental health issues at the level they are? And the other piece to keep in mind is, and I think that leaders forget this sometimes, is that the pace of change is accelerating so much that it just feels relentless for a lot of people. But that lack of clarity is the number one reason why people do not buy into the change. That's the number one reason. The second reason is that, and this is kind of interesting, leaders, as they're thinking about a change, they've been contemplating it for many, many months, most likely. What are the consumer demand changes? What's the market shifts? What are the economic changes in the environment? What's going on in the socio-political place where there's an opportunity or a missed opportunity, or where's there a gap in our product portfolio? All of these reasons. And they've been thinking about this, researching it. They've probably hired consultants for millions of dollars to help them figure out what to do. And then they go ahead and they make the announcement. They forget that the rest of the organization doesn't have that context. So now people are thinking, well, wait a minute, I'm not connecting with this. Like, I don't know what you're necessarily doing. I'm trying to understand why it's important. You haven't asked me how this is going to, how I can help. What's the problem we're solving for? A lot of that doesn't get shared. That's not that transparent. And I understand that sometimes, depending on what the decision is, that some of these moves that leaders make are market moving moves, and they can't share that too far in advance. But sometimes leaders are also not willing to own up to the fact that maybe their strategy has been flawed for the last 3 or 5 years, right? So that transparency matters because your people can probably help you get to where you want to go if you involve them. But a lot of times that doesn't happen. They're too far along and then the leader disappears. They've made the announcement at the town hall meeting or they got the memo out and then they go off moving on to the rest of what they're going to do next. And there's this tail of people behind them that are just trying to figure out what's happening and what's my role in that? How do I stay connected to that? So that's missing a lot, that human connection piece. The third piece, and a lot of people don't talk about caring in the workplace, But there's a oftentimes just a lack of caring about the impact of what is going to be happening on the employees. And this reminds me of the situation where employees have typically have a strong affiliation with their place of work. They either they have good friends at work. Some of them have family members at work. They like their job. They like the company's purpose. Maybe they use the products and services. And so when the organization comes in and disrupts that, they resent it. They're like, don't mess with my stuff, right? I know what I'm doing. And now you're coming in and you're changing things on me again or still. It reminds me of, I don't know if you have children. Do you have any children?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so teenagers typically, mom and dad comes into the room and you're all you're doing is picking up, you want to pick up the dirty clothes to do the laundry, and you walk in and it looks like a cyclone hit the room. There's clothes everywhere, there's shoes strewn around, there's I don't know, books, papers, toys, whatever. And your child comes in behind you and you start straightening up and they're like, don't touch my things. Like leave it alone. Don't mess with my stuff. People resent when you take things that disrupt what's familiar to them and now you're introducing another thing I have to learn or another way of doing something. That's the third reason. And their fourth one is very common, and that's fear. People fear uncertainty. They fear the unknown. They A lot of times employees feel like, am I going to be able to have the competence to move through this change? I'm going to maybe have to learn some new things. Am I going to be capable enough to do that? And so when that happens, they feel like they can't step out of their comfort zone as easily as leaders can, because leaders are typically have gotten to where they are because they're risk takers. They step out of their comfort zone more likely and more often than most other people do. They forget that not everybody's like that. So those are the four main reasons. It's really, really around the clarity related to what they're talking about, what the change is, why it's necessary, how it's going to impact people, the lack of connection with the organization as you go through the change and you start talking about what it is and how you can involve people in buying into the change. That sort of lack of caring about the fact that I'm disrupting your life again and what that's going to mean for you. Imagine dominoes. There's one domino, they're all lined up across the room, and you hit one. It has a ripple effect on every other one. And sometimes they just forget that. Sometimes they just don't care. They're like, get over it, right? There's a better way to handle that, or another way, I should say, an alternate approach that gets you more buy-in. And then the last is around courage. So that's where the four C's come in on the change framework that I have been using for the last 15 or 20 years around if you take those problems and apply them and sort of reverse engineer and give people more clarity, have more direct connection and authentic connection with people, care about what the decisions are that you're making and how that impacts other people, and have the courage to do the right thing legally, ethically, and morally, you're going to have a better chance of success than if you don't. So that's how to wrap it up in a bow.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed that piece where, yes, every human being resists when you want to take them outside of what they are familiar with
Mm-hmm.
what they've been used to. I mean, some people call it their comfort zone. Once you want to take them out of that, there's that resistance that comes in.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoy the way you broke it down to be able to look at all of those angles and how you also built your model out of it. I want to ask you this. What role does communication play in the change process?
So I love this question as well because many people will confuse change management with change communications. They're not the same thing. Change management is a formulaic process for how do you get from where you are to where you want to go. And it's usually a project management type of activity. There are milestones, there's different uh, protocols for how change management works, different models out there. Communication is always a piece of those models, but it has its own nuances. There's one thing around communications is like, tell me what's happening, the what, the so what, why it's important, the now what do I need to do, right? But that's a piece of it. That's sort of the business strategic part. And then the rest of it is really around how you involve and keep the organization feeling like they're part of the solution. And a lot of times people feel like the communications work is just what is the CEO going to say at the town hall meeting and what is the email that's going to go out. That's the very, very beginning and the tip of the iceberg. All of the communication that happens in between is where the discipline of communication is more around listening and engaging than it is about talking. And so over in my experience doing the communications work, some of the things that we did with that project I mentioned earlier, people thought we were crazy. They're like, why would you do something like that? I'll give you an example. As I mentioned to you, we were going to be moving 2,500 people from 4 or 5 different locations into a brand new building. And we were retrofitting an older building to suit for us. And the open space issue was a huge issue for people because they were feeling like, first of all, I can't have confidential conversations. It's going to be too noisy. I'm giving up an office. I don't have room for all of my stuff, the affiliation I mentioned before. And people are proud of what they've done, and they've got awards and books and magazine articles and pictures of their family. And where am I going to put all of those things? So we kept hearing from a change management team perspective. There were communications people, myself and one of my team members sitting on the change management team, kept hearing all of these objections from people. And so I was in line grabbing a cup of coffee one afternoon, and I was chatting with a woman who was in front of me, who was not involved in the move, who I happened to know. And we were chatting about it a little bit. And she said, well, I'm a little worried about the desks. And, now we're packing our things and I don't know what to take. And I don't know if there's going to be enough room. She said, I wish I could see what the new desks are going to look like. Everyone was going to have an assigned desk so you wouldn't have to, walk in and find a place to work. And I thought about that and I said, well, gosh, the change management team has seen the furniture. Why can't everybody else see the furniture? Then maybe they could kick the tires. Maybe we could do something around that. Now, the people handling procurement with the furniture designers thought I was crazy, but I presented the idea of let's take the new furniture, put it in the old sites, and sit there and work in open space as a change management team and talk to people and ask them what do they like? What do they not like? What are they worried about? What what's keeping them up at night? What questions do they have? And it was the most brilliant thing we did, Robert, because we did that in each one of the current sites that we had. Our change management team members and communications team members sat there for 5 or 6 hours a day. We did our jobs. We had our laptops. We were working through the lunch hour periods. And we answered every single question. And then we heard a lot of things that we weren't thinking about. And it was a great opportunity for us to hear the noise firsthand. And then we were able to use our communications to address those situations. But if we hadn't done that, I don't know that we would have gotten that rich feedback and that rich engagement. And the senior leaders, they weren't doing that. They weren't doing that at all. They just wanted to hear the noise be quelched, like from them. But that gave us opportunities to talk at, town hall meetings and staff meetings and give managers new information and Q&As and all those kinds of things that you do as a communications practice to keep leaders and managers up to date on what's happening and to let the rest of the organization know that we've got them. We're listening. We're hearing you. That really helped to change the tide for us. But I share that as an example because most people would never think of doing something like that. But we kept hearing that people were concerned about the new furniture and what it was going to be like and how close they were going to be to the next person near them. And they got to see that it wasn't as bad as they thought. We let them kick the tires. So we engaged our employees in a lot of different kinds of things. We even ran some videos because some people complained that they were not in the office those 2 weeks to see the furniture. So we invited some employees to do a kick the tires video with us, and that we took them on a little tour for 3 or 4 minutes and showed them everything. But that was because we listened to even people who were objecting to the thing we were doing to handle objections. But I just share that as a lot of people don't think out of the box about how can we listen more to be able to really address the concerns that people have when you're going through a change. Now, that's an unusual type of example, but you can really apply that thinking to almost any change effort that you're trying to make in your organization.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that experience. I mean, just the way you narrated it, I believe staff must have really gotten a lot, and I think you guys checked a lot of the boxes even before the move, which really helped to settle things down. Because I've also been part of an experience where there's a major move, and things were not communicated well, and it just became a mess. Because in the end, they were picking pieces right when everything had already happened. And then it becomes harder because it takes a longer time to be able to get things settled again. But I think you guys did a good job to really get things in place before even the move happened altogether.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, and you just raised a really, you made me think of this, you raised a really good point around that. People want to know what to expect. And in the absence of communication, they're going to make up their own stories. So, to the best of your ability, control the narrative and be able to give people, enough information to be able to settle their concerns and and help them through the move. And or whatever that move is, whatever that transition is. And that often gets missed. Those two pieces, the connection and the caring piece, they get missed. A lot of people go right from clarity to the action steps to the courage. And so that the business strategy part is most communications handle that. It's the caring part, the human connection part that often gets missed. And that's critical. I think more today than ever with all of the bots doing a lot of work for people these days.
Yes. So I really want to get to something really personal to you. You developed the four C's. We've touched on it a little bit in, some of the answers you gave to the question, but I just want you to, help us understand the core principles behind the four C's, which you help leaders navigate transformation.
I think the first part is that as a communications professional, your role is to help leaders understand the mood in the organization. Because as leaders, the more leaders will know, and you need data behind this. So data is a huge piece of this, and you need anecdotal data as well as much, data points that you can have on this because leaders are focused in a different place. They know what they want to do and they all they care about is getting it done. They forget about what it takes in the organization to make it happen. And the more change that's happening in the organization, the the harder it is to have an appetite for change. And it's your job as the communications person to make sure that your leaders understand that. Because there's a thing called change fatigue. And the more you put in front of employees, as much as we can handle change as human beings, we're adaptable creatures, it gets to a saturation point where people they don't even know what they're focusing on anymore because you haven't helped them do that. And so there's multiple layers of leadership. And I think one of the things you need to do is make sure that you're letting leaders know what's going on in the organization and speaking truth to them and having the courage to use one of the four C's to raise those issues. Now, not everything gets listened to, not everything gets handled, but you can at least start to plant the seeds for if we don't take care of this problem, it's going to get bigger, bigger, bigger. And your goal, getting back to the business goal, your goal is to get the goal done, and I'm here to help you make it happen. So that's one of the biggest things is making sure that leaders understand what's the mood, what's the temperature, what's the appetite, what's the capacity for the change that you want to make. And if those things aren't checked off, we got it, we got it, we got it, then you've got work to do on a fundamental level. And that's where your next levels of leadership come in. I've seen this happen because I've been one of the people who gets the package of material from up on high. Here's the stuff. Here's the announcement. Here's the press release. Here's the 17 slide for the deck. Or It's exhausting. Have the conversation with managers. We set something up that we called leader briefings. And it was really as part of an acquisition that we had done at Bayer. And it was a very long acquisition and we hadn't closed the deal yet. And there was a lot of unrest in the organization. And we knew we needed to do something with leaders because we did some research. And the data told us that the top layer or two fully on board with understanding what the acquisition was all about, and they agreed with the decision the company was making. The next levels, like vice president, director, manager, the differential was in the upper 30s or 40s, meaning that they agreed and understood the deal. We didn't do a good job of selling it in the middle. Well, who are the people that most people report to, listen to, trust, take their direction from? That group in the middle, not necessarily the CEO or his top team. So we did some work using that data. We went to the senior leadership, and we said, you guys haven't done a good enough job. We've been giving you materials. What else could we do? So we started some leader briefings and we started bringing our people together for 30 minutes. What are your questions? What are your people asking? How can we help you? What more materials do you need? Or all of that, or just let's open up the conversation or bring in a subject matter expert or whatever. But you have to engage these different groups of people and meet them where they're at. And if you come at it from this will help you be a better leader and help you bring your team along, nobody wants to be the last one on the football field who doesn't have their people on board with the change. You don't want to be called out for that. So that's where the nuance of the communication comes in because it's not just about delivering a message or a speech, it's bringing the organization into the fold and getting them involved and answering their questions and helping them understand how they can translate what the organization is trying to do, what this means for me and my team. How does our work change and what are we going to do about it?
Yeah, how does our work change and how we gonna and what are we gonna do about it? So I want you to connect the dots: clarity, connection, caring, and courage. How do these four C's work together?
Well, the way I think about it is a little bit of a in a circular motion because I feel like unless you have the first element, which is the clarity, none of the other pieces make any sense. Well, what are we connecting people to, right? And you need to be really clear about that. We're doing X because of this reason. This is what we're expecting. Give me the vision of what the future state looks like. Help me understand it and help me see myself in it, right? Because people need to wrap their heads around what all of that means. And then that's where the connection comes in. You can say we're going to, go do X, but if the team is not sure like what does that mean for me, that's where the connection piece comes in. The caring piece is well you can ask me questions, but if you don't listen to my answers and you don't take my feedback and you don't take my suggestion about what you're trying to get done. And by the way, I'm in front of those customers. I know what they care about. I know how to help make this change for them, but you're not asking me. You're just giving me something that's just esoteric. I don't understand how I can make it work. So when you have that lack of connection and caring about that's a misunderstanding of what the change is, then it just doesn't all work together. The courage piece comes in when you can have all the clarity of Waterford Crystal, and you can have as many connections as I don't know Taylor Swift or Beyonce, or you can be as caring as Mother Teresa. But if you don't take action and make all those pieces work, you're just going to be you're going to be nowhere. You're going to be stuck trying to figure out what's not working here. And when I say take action, you can have a direction that you want to take your organization in, but life keeps changing and evolving, and there's always new dynamics, and you have to be adaptable and say, if my vision is clear enough, we might change how we get there a little bit. But how are you going to know that unless you're talking to your people? So that's how all the pieces work together. Does that is that resonating with you? It's
Oh,
just
it
it's
resonates so much with me. And I've seen this in real life. I've seen this in my business and some of the clients I work with. I've seen this in corporate world, which I was in a couple of years. I've seen it. It works. It really works. And thank you so much for really throwing so much light in it. And that really it really showcases the strength of that framework that you develop. And thank you so much for joining those dots. And I really wanted a listener to understand because, yes, if we talk about four C's and you don't connect the dots, a leader might think, a listener might think, how do they connect? And I think you really, you did it some justice by really just bringing out each of those points together.
I have another example if you would like to give me a minute of how my husband and I used this framework to get something both of us both wanted. We had been married about 7 or 8 years and realized as we were attending an auto show that we both wanted to own a classic car at some point. We couldn't afford it at the time, but we started talking about it, and he didn't know that I wanted that, and I didn't know that he wanted that. So it was a bit of an aha. I said, "Oh, it's another thing we have in common." So I asked him what kind of a car he wanted, and he said a Ford Thunderbird convertible. I said, "Oh, that's exactly what I would have wanted." And then he said what year, and I didn't know what he meant, but I said, well, I don't know, the 70s. And he goes, no, 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 1965. I said, okay. So he showed me a picture of it. So he said, well, someday when we can afford it, we'll buy a 1965 Ford Thunderbird convertible. Well, fast forward a few years ago, we wound up getting a 1965 Thunderbird convertible. The first thing we needed was clarity about what we wanted. 1965 Ford Thunderbird convertible, and I wanted a blue one. So my husband spent 9 months trying to find a blue one. And he came to me one day and he said, Mary Lou, I think we've got the car. It's in great condition. It's a dealership in Naples, Florida. We live in New Jersey. And I said, okay. He says, there's only one thing wrong with it. And I said, what? And he said, it's red. So I said, well, let me see it. And I took a look at it and it was beautiful. And we decided clarity, we're going to get the red one. So that was it. The connection part was throughout this whole process. We didn't never bought one of these cars before. So we were involving classic car owners who we knew, as well as people in the Thunderbird clubs, the people we were meeting at car shows and talking with them. And they were giving us all kinds of advice on what to do and what not to do. The connection part. The caring part was all of these people were not getting paid for their service. We talked to mechanics, all types of people. Once we got the card, we took people out to dinner. We sent them thank you notes. We sent them bottles of wine, just a little thank you for helping us because we cared about the impact of what we were doing on them. And then the courage was when I had to wire a big check to somebody we'd never met for a car we had never seen in person, only on video and in pictures, to somebody in Florida and hope and pray to God that, the car would make it to New Jersey. And they showed us them, on a video loading the car up on the carrier. And when I found out that the driver's name was Alex, who was that was my brother's name, I knew we were got a little God wink and we were going to be okay. But you can apply that change framework to anything you're trying to get in your life, whether it's a change at work or a change in your life, because you can use it interchangeably and you can use it over and over again. That's why I call it circular. So that's my little story.
I love that personal example. I really love it. So, Mary Lou, what common mistakes do leaders make when it comes to change?
I think one of the biggest mistakes that leaders make is that they they don't appreciate what the employee base that they're trying to take through the change is already dealing with and already going through. And the less they care about that, the more resistance they're going to get from their employees. And I think that, even if leaders have it clear in their mind what they want to do and why it's important and what it's going to mean for the organization, they have to remember that those employees do not have the same, most employees do not have the same level of understanding of what's happening, and they don't have the context, they don't have the data, they don't have the all the background that they've been thinking about for a very long time. I think one of the biggest mistakes that leaders make is they misdiagnose that the organization's ready for yet another change. And I think they also forget the fact that there are multiple changes going on at the same time. I think those are two of the biggest conundrums that leaders have. And I think if they really do care about their people, not as an asset, but as the means through which they get things done, would you want a healthy organization to help you make through the change, or one that's or sick or disengaged? I mean, the numbers of, that you see in various surveys, Gallup surveys, et cetera, on employee engagement are just abysmal. Most people are not thrilled to be working where they're working, and they're having a hard time while they're there. And turnover, if people decide to leave, and this is a very tough job market right now, at least in the United States. If people opt to leave, it's hard to find another role. And if people stay, they're staying because they feel like there's no option. And so do you want people who are in your organization trying to make a change who feel like they're stuck and there's no option, or do you want them to be excited about it and be there and help you get through it and help be part of the change as opposed to have the change imposed upon them?
Yeah, I agree. It's a very tough job market, but despite that, you want people that are excited. You want people that are
Yeah, and the cost of replacing people that you are going to replace, that you're not replacing with AI technology, the people that you need humans there to be there to do, you want to treat them with humanity. And I
absolutely.
think that gets lost a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So something also linked to that I want to ask you. Your work centers around helping people prosper, personally, professionally, and financially. In your opinion, what does prosperity mean to you?
Thank you for this question. I don't know if you're going to like my answer, but prosperity for me means whatever it means for me, and it means whatever it means for you. There's no, yes, there's a general definition for prosperity, but for me, prosperity means what I said a little bit earlier, doing the things I love to do with the people I love most and having the health and financial ability to do it. That's what prosperity means for me. It might mean something completely different for someone else. So when I talk about helping people prosper, one of the first things I want to get from my clients is what do you want? What do you want your life to be like? And it's interesting that a lot of people hadn't have never been asked the question, have never really thought about it, or if they thought about it, they haven't thought about it in a long time. Or they've always had this dream and it keeps getting dimmed, you know, and they just feel like they are never going to get where they want to get or do what they want to do, so they give up on their dreams. And so when I think of prosperity, for someone it could mean I just want to live a happy, simple, healthy life. Fine. What's your life like now? Are you happy? Is it simple? Are you healthy? Well, if the answer to all those questions is not yes, then you're not living in prosperity. So let's figure out where you want to start. Some people think of prosperity as financial wealth. Yes, but that's not the same definition for everybody.
I think personally I align with your answer because for me, I will define prosperity as what gives you fulfillment.
Hmm.
That would be my own definition because why some people get fulfilled financially, some people get fulfilled with health, some people get fulfilled with how they give back and how they make other people happy. And yeah, so I agree with you. Your definition, it touches on individuality because
Yes,
everybody would not define it the same way.
right, right, exactly. And I think that that's what's so nice about having this opportunity to work with people in all different stages of their life, in all different stages of their career, and helping them gain that clarity and understanding where are those connections and the caring piece. And one thing I didn't say about the caring is that it's a little bit twofold. One is caring about what you're doing or what you want to change and how that impacts others, but it also means taking care of yourself. Because if you don't have the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical strength to lead yourself or an organization through change, you're going to burn out. You're not going to be able to handle it. And that stamina is necessary, whether you've got a personal change you want to make or you're a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar organization, you need that stamina. And taking care of yourself is critical. You're, as much as it may sound a little selfish, it isn't, because you've been on an airplane, I'm sure, and you've heard the safety announcement, right? If should the cabin pressure change and the oxygen mask deploy, put your mask on first, and before you can help others, because you're going to be of no use to anyone if you're gasping for air or unconscious, right? So that's part of the caring and courage. Prosperity takes courage. You've got to stick with it. If something is that important to you and you know your why, and you know what is most important to you and how that's important to you, that gives you your motivation to keep going.
Oh, yes. Yes. Yes, Mary Lou. So I want to give you the opportunity to give a message to someone listening that might feel stuck in the season of change. What will be your message for that person?
I love this question because people are stuck and sometimes they don't even realize they're stuck. I think the biggest thing that people should know is that while they might feel alone, they're not alone. A lot of people who feel stuck will feel like this is just the way it has to be, or this just is just the way it is, and I'm just going to figure out how to work through it. The truth is that nobody goes at it alone. Anyone who's trying to get anything done is going to work with other people to get it done. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And if it truly is a significant mental or emotional issue, seek out medical professionals for help. I am not a therapist. I do not have medical credentials. I'm a listener. The thing people will tell me most, my clients on the phone, thank you for listening, and in a non-judgmental way, and just parroting back to me something I said or noticing my body language when I said it. Those are the things that people don't experience when they're in a conversation with somebody else. Because most of the time, somebody else is doing this, or they're paying attention over here, or they're not, they don't give you your undivided time. And the gift of time is the greatest gift you can give anyone. So if someone is stuck, my advice is find a friend or a professional who will listen to you, and so that you feel heard, and they can help you uncover whatever it is that's keeping you stuck, because that's usually, it's here, it's inside. It's usually not something outside that's keeping you stuck. But it's not easy for people to ask for help either, especially people who have a lot of pride and who have accomplished a lot of things.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I mean, for somebody listening, if you're stuck, like Mary Lou said, seek out help. I mean, seek out a listening partner. If it's something that needs, medical professional, please reach out. Don't stay alone. Don't fight this alone. Seek out help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, Mary Lou, as we begin to wrap up things here, we have a tradition at the Voice of Impact. We have a couple of words put together. We call them the Voice of Impact themes. And we'll
Mm-hmm.
give you an opportunity to choose two out of our six themes at the Voice of Impact. And I'll read it just so that you can listen to it and choose two. Number one is make a difference, rebuild, overcome, stronger, peace, and patience. So make a difference, rebuild, overcome, stronger, peace, and patience. So you can choose two out of the six, one that speaks to you, and then one that you're just speaking to somebody else so they could be motivated by that.
This is probably the toughest question of all of them, Robert, but I knew it was coming, so I will try to work with this. I think one of them that resonates strongly with me is make a difference. The work that I'm doing now is the most fulfilling work I've ever done. And the reason I say that is because within an hour of a conversation with somebody that I'm coaching, I can see their body language go from tense or insecure or confused to relieved. Like, okay, I learned something about myself. I had a conversation with somebody who didn't judge me. I was in a safe space. I know this conversation is confidential. I feel like I'm lighter. Everyone tells me I feel lighter. For me, that's making a difference in somebody else's life. That's the way I honor my brother's passing. That's the way I honor his memory. And I think the other piece of making a difference is that every time that I give back, I know that I'm getting something in return. It may not be immediate, but for me, making a difference is my legacy. Like when I have left this world, I want people to say, she helped me live a better life. And so that's for me just a very, make a difference is just something, and it may sound a little cliche for people, and it's always different for other people, but I want people to say about me that I've helped them come from a place of despair or whatever it was to a place of prosperity. Now, for other people, I'm going to go to the last word you said, which is patience. Patience is a virtue for a reason because it isn't easy to have patience, especially in this world we live in where immediate gratification seems to be the thing that everybody is looking for all of the time. I can't get it fast enough. I can't get enough of it. I can't get whatever that is. I think patience is becoming a lost virtue a little bit because the world is moving so fast. Anyone who's trying to make a change has to have patience because it's not easy. Change is hard. It's very hard. It's so hard that most people don't like, that's one of the other reasons why people don't like to go through change because it's less painful to stay with what you know than it is to gain something new. Right? It's like anytime you make a change, you have to give something up. People don't like to give something up. They don't like to lose what's familiar to them. So give yourself the time, the space, and the grace to live through the change. The journey is as important as the outcome, but don't give up on yourself. Have patience and work through the change. Use the four C's. It will help you. I I just know that patience is something that people lose very quickly. So I just encourage you to hang in there.
Don't give up on yourself and use the forces. Have patience. Those are powerful words that you used, Mary Lou. So now, if somebody listening wants to connect with you, what are the best ways that they could reach out to you?
So thank you for the opportunity again today. I've really enjoyed this conversation and you're a wonderful interviewer. So thank you so much. The two most prevalent ways of reaching me is you can go to my website, which is www.helppeopleprosper.com. You can learn more about my 4Cs change framework there. I have blogs. I have some free downloads that you could take advantage of. And you can learn more about my services and what I do. And then I'm also very active on LinkedIn. So you can find me on my LinkedIn profile, Mary Lou Panzano, Mary space Loupanzano. And I post two to three articles a week there, and I'm always sharing thoughts on leadership and on change and on some of the things that we talked about today.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Mary Lou. Um, Thank you. And I'm repeating that because we really appreciate your time and all your insights that you've brought today on the Voice of Impact. And also reminding us that change is not the enemy, confusion is.
Yes.
And today's conversation reminds us that when leaders bring clarity, empathy, courage into moments of uncertainty, change becomes an opportunity rather than an obstacle. And to the person listening right now, change may feel uncomfortable, but within that change lies the opportunity to grow, to lead, and to prosper. And prosperity depends on what you define it, just like Mary Lou said. Prosperity begins the moment you stop resisting change and start leading through it. It's an opportunity. We are Ndoping and co-performance designers and strategy coaches, and we help leaders and organizations create what we call clarity, alignment, and sustainable impact. This has been the Voice of Impact, and we were humbled to have Mary Lou share her rich experience and everything she does. And we are encouraging you through the Voice of Impact that if you're struggling through something, you're struggling through change, please reach out to Mary Lou. You've gotten her contacts, and if by any means you missed that, please reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to connect you with Mary Lou. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep using your voice. Thank you for coming today, Mary Lou.
Thank you again. This was a delight. I appreciate it.
It's very simple. Empower as many people as possible. Empower as many leaders as possible. Touch as many, professionals as I can. Be able to make it